So, is Oregon going to flip five-star tight end Linkon Cure? Well, I don't have any inside info here. What I do have is an assessment of a quote that Linkon Cure gave recently. And here's how I want you to think about this. So, Linkon Cure was asked about whether he is going to flip, where he's at, and he said, "I'm a wildcat, but anything could happen." Okay, so he is still verbally committed to Kansas State, with National Signing Day around the corner, and buzz from Steve Wiltfong at On3 that he could be flipping to Oregon. If he were currently an Oregon commit, if an Oregon commit in the 25 cycle were to give that quote, "I'm a duck, but anything could happen," how would you feel? Put the shoe on the other foot. Would you feel good, or would you be like, kind of seems like he's made up his mind and he's just waiting to announce it on National Signing Day? I feel like I see an article on Twitter every hour about the expected buzz for Oregon on National Signing Day, and Dan Lanning has knocked it out of the park the last couple of years. And guess what? Those recruiting classes have paid off this year and last year, and they'll pay off next year and the year after that and such. But, that's more off-season discussion here. So Cure is a five-star tight end. Oregon already flipped Vander Plug from Washington. They flipped another guy who we'll talk about in just a moment. So they'd go from one tight end to two. Is that a pressing need per se? Maybe more so than another position. I don't think you ever turn down a guy of Cure's talent if you can get him. I didn't expect them per se to go after a second tight end after they got Plug. I think there's absolutely room on the roster there. For a position where true freshmen play regularly, including this season, Roger Saleapaga has seen the field, recovered the fumble on the squib onside kick against Ohio State, played when Terrence Ferguson was out with appendicitis against Purdue, played real, impactful, meaningful snaps. Kenyon Sadiq played as a true freshman. This is a position where guys can make an instant impact, and Oregon's losing Terrence Ferguson and Patrick Herbert after this year. So, yeah, I can absolutely see him going to get another tight end. That's one of the biggest names to watch for on National Signing Day. I'll have some other ones to look at tomorrow, but one guy who has already committed to Oregon is Zac Stascausky. Zac Stascowski. He is an offensive tackle, 6'6", 275 pounds, number 243 overall player, according to 24/7, number 27 offensive tackle. He's a Central Catholic high school product. Now, I will overlook that as a Lake Oswego grad myself. I did not care for Central Catholic, amongst other high schools in the area that I played sports against for many, many years. Central was not at the top of my, shall we say, strongest rivalry with where I would, gladly plant my flag at midfield if that were an option available to me. But I was playing other sports, not football. I know, big surprise. Spencer wasn't playing football in high school. Can't believe I was commentating on football for a couple years. So, but that, of course, is all overlooked because Staskowski is a guy that my buddy Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies was pretty stoked to have. He has got some highlights of driving defenders about 40 yards down the field, like full-on Michael Orr in the blind side. It's pretty cool. He's the number one player in the state of Oregon. There was a panel of 24/7 Sports analysts talking about him when he was still committed to Washington, about how important of a recruit he was for Jed Fish and company, because they see him as someone that can be an early NFL draft pick. He's a 4-star guy, not a 5-star guy like Josh Connerly, but that definitely, there were some similarities there with his athletic profile, 6'6", 275. Connerly coming out of high school, I think was 6'5", 2. Let me pull that up real quick. How good is my memory? Let's see. I think he was 6'5", like 2. No, he was 6'4", listed at 305, but I think Connerly slimmed down a little bit. No, 6'5", 283. So yeah, Connerly 6'5", 283 coming out of high school, and Staskowski 6'6", 275 pounds. Andrew Ivins of 24/7 Sports said that he's quick to establish his base and can pull, amongst other good things they had to say about him. Not going to do a full film breakdown here, but that last sentence there, he can pull. What did we just watch on Saturday night with Oregon running football? They like to pull linemen. We've seen it the last couple of years with Dillingham, with Will Stein. That is something that Dan Lanning clearly believes in offensively because, it's just counter, power. These are concepts everybody runs now. So got plenty of physical upside there, and it just absolutely feels a little bit extra sweet when you flip him from Washington right after beating Washington by 28 points. So he's the fourth Oregon offensive lineman of this 2025 class, joining Douglas Utu, who Oregon flipped from Tennessee a few weeks ago during the season, Dimitri Manning, who's a bigger guy listed as a tackle, but I think maybe projects more as a guard, and then Zaire Addison, who has also been a riser in the 24/7 sports rankings in the last couple months. So right now, Oregon is sitting at the number 7 class in the country, and that's a great place to be. They've hauled in back-to-back top 10 classes, 2024, highest rated recruiting class ever. I don't think this class will get into that discussion. 26 could, based on how they have laid the groundwork here. And I'll talk about one of those guys on the last segment of today's show because it's interesting to say the least. But I think that Oregon is in a good spot. I expect there to be names that maybe aren't on everybody's radar that pop up on Wednesday, or big names that Oregon's after that, like, you've come to expect that because that's the standard that Dan Lanning has set over the last couple of years, and the staff as well. So they've done a great job, and they're doing a great job. And Zac Stascausky could be a future starting left tackle for the Ducks. I got a mailbag question, which is always open. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB or at LockedOnDucks. Or if you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go become a Locked On Ducks insider. Link in the description below. You can get a free 14-day trial. Charles sent in a question asking about College Game Day going to the SEC title game instead of the Big Ten title game. Georgia and Texas have already played this year, and I believe College Game Day was there for that. Understandably so. It was a top 5 matchup at the time. And they're going to go to that again instead of Oregon and Penn State, who haven't played this year. I wasn't expecting to get a question on this, but I had a pretty immediate response. Are you surprised they went to the SEC right as, get this, Alabama, according to our friends at FanDuel, is a minus 193 favorite to make the playoff. If Clemson doesn't beat SMU, Alabama, who was beaten to a pulp by Oklahoma 2 weeks ago, who's not a good football team, by the way. Oklahoma is not good. 2-6 in conference play in their first year. They barely made a bowl game. They only made it because they beat Alabama 24-3. The refs took 7 points off the board, so you know what? 24-10. It was an embarrassing game for the Crimson Tide, and they're going to get into the playoff anyway, unless Clemson is able to beat SMU and get the automatic bid from the ACC. SMU stays at 11-2. Bama is pushed out at 9-3. That's what I'd like to have happen. But as Joe Tessitore was correctly, but unnecessarily pointing out over and over and over again that Georgia is absolutely in the playoff in that thriller against Georgia Tech on Friday night, despite the possibility of being in the conference championship game, losing, and then having 3 losses on the year. The definitive statement there and the buy-in for ESPN, who just became media rights partners with which conference? Oh, that's right, the SEC. Are you surprised they're going to that conference instead of the Big Ten, which has got CBS and Fox as its media partners? Are you really surprised? Because I'm not. I'm not surprised. Disappointed, maybe a little. Like, on paper, yeah, you have seen Georgia, Texas before. And this is a higher ranked matchup, by the way, Oregon and Penn State. It's the only undefeated team. Oregon's number 1 in the country. So disappointed? Yeah. Surprised? Absolutely, positively not.